everyone. Thanks for coming today. We're going to talk about Explore Interactive. We are a team co-op, and we comprise of Aaron, myself, Jason, Jasmine, and Lizzie. We're going to talk a little bit about the background and the research of what we did, our design process. We'll have the product rebuild, and then we'll also talk about some things moving forward and give some time for question and answer. So, little background, we have Explore Interactive was an augmented reality game that deals with taking digital imagery and interfacing it into an actual physical environment. They teach STEM education, so that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The first module they have built out teaches electricity, and they dealing with energy and circuits with that, and it's geared toward 3rd through 6th grade students. So the challenge we were given by talking with our subject matter experts during the client meeting, we were tasked with putting together the onboarding for this to make sure that it gets students into the game quickly. We also wanted to make sure that it was engaging so that students would want to come back and play it later. And we also need to deal with the error handling and make sure that we did it in a constructive manner. All the while we were doing this, we wanted to make sure that we were getting the students engaged through storytelling so they felt a little more immersed in the product. So to do this, we did some research, and we started off with our domain research. Areas that we covered with this was augmented reality games, ed tech, which is education and technology, and we also took a look at STEM education. We also went through and looked at a competitive analysis, which I'll talk about a little bit more here in just a second. And we also did some user interviews, and during our user interviews, we focused on students and teachers. So for our competitive analysis, if you look to the left or the right on our diagram, we have traditional instruction against game-based instruction, and then as you go from the top to bottom, we talk about classroom versus home. So in the top left corner, we have a couple of products we found, Unimmersive and Z-Space, which also go through and do education while using virtual reality and augmented reality. Then we had Tinker, which is a web-based platform that teaches kids coding. And then we have Osmo and Minecraft, which are a little bit more entertainment, definitely more games for home, but they also utilize augmented reality. So we found there was an opportunity for Explore Interactive to fall into the classroom and game-based while using their augmented reality technology. So we did some user interviews, and we found this to be an informational experience where we synthesized data, and from that data we were able to come up with our problem statement. Our problem statement is teachers of 3rd through 6th grade students need a supplemental tool for their STEM lessons in order to engage their students in a fun and meaningful experience and build positive connotation to STEM that encourages further exploration. So from that, we worked with some design principles that kind of keep us on track as we were building out our product. The first one we wanted to focus on was foster growth. We needed to have a product that was going to be challenging, but also allowed for trial and error. We wanted it to be easy to implement at the teacher's discretion. We also wanted to drive it home, so the design needs to aid in the progress through the storytelling, and no previous necessary. It should be able to suit the needs of any individual, particularly the students. So we started researching a little bit more about who our users are, and in doing that we came up with some personas. The first persona that we put together was a student-focused one, and this is Brody. Brody likes playing outside with his friends, but he has to do homework every once in a while, and when he does, he wants to do something creative like build dioramas. He also likes going through and working in science class with his friends. He finds he's most engaged whenever he's working on cool science projects. And then he likes working with collaboration over competition, especially whenever it comes to games being integrated into the classroom. He finds that sometimes when he gets into a situation where he may be losing, he gets frustrated. So behind every great student is a great teacher. So here's our persona for Bonnie, the teacher. Bonnie has got limited time for curriculum preparation, so she's dealing with keeping parents up to date with what's going on with the students, also dealing with administration. So she needs to find engaging materials, and she knows there are a lot of games out there, but she wants to make sure the games that she's going to incorporate are interactive and that they're easy to understand. She also knows the materials need to align with class curriculum because she has requirements as far as what she has to do with the curriculum as it is. So after going through and looking at our personas and thinking about our users, we started our design process. I'm going to have Lizzie expand on that a little bit more for us.
Alrighty. So as problem solvers, we were delighted with the challenge that Explore Interactive provided us. And now that we had defined the problem and we knew who we were solving it for, we could get into concepting. So after many rounds of brainstorming, we had 10 concepts that we wanted to gauge how Bonnie and Brody would feel about them. So we did some concept testing with paper prototypes with students and teachers. After synthesizing that data, we were able to see which of these concepts tested well and which ones didn't. So we decided to move forward with these 5 concepts. The first we called the elevator, which was an onboarding concept that would introduce Brody into the game. And then after that, we have avatar creation, which is where he can go in and customize his own character throughout the game. And then we have a teacher dashboard, which is for Bonnie to be able to track Brody's progress and data. A control panel, and this is a concept that incorporates Explore Interactive storytelling into the game, and it also gives Brody a way to track his own progress throughout the game. And then error handling, which consists of a first step of alerting Brody when he's made a mistake, and a second step of allowing him to get more information on how to correct that mistake. So these 5 concepts tested well, but why? There's some surface level things we could say. They were more engaging and testers felt more connected to these ideas, but going further, why were they more connected to them and what made them engaging? What are the things that, despite age or personality differences, make people feel attached to an idea? So some common themes we saw with these concepts were that testers felt attached to the ones that they pictured their future selves using and imagining the possibilities and details that our paper prototypes hadn't specified. So their excitement in filling in these gaps provided us with ideas on how to flesh out these concepts more, as well as what to leave room for the player to have more control over. So we took these paper prototypes and then we prototyped them out in Axure further. We took them then to the Homewood Pop-Up Science event in Homewood, Illinois. And this is an event that Homewood Science Center puts on once a month during the summer season for students to come in and learn about different STEM topics. Their philosophy is that you shouldn't have to pay a bunch of money or travel very far to have fun learning about STEM. So we didn't know what to expect from this event, but we were so impressed with the amount of students and teachers that wanted to test out our prototypes and give us feedback. This was an invaluable experience for our team, and it had such a huge impact on this project and on each team member. We got to see how excited the students were to test out our prototypes and give us all of their ideas. And we also got to see how they really much prefer to work at their own pace, and definitely not the pace of our instruction. And they just want to be able to figure things out on their own. So while this was a challenge for us, a new challenge for us during testing, it actually taught us that this need for independence was going to need to translate into the design. Sorry. Okay, so now we had even more subtext for what our problem statement really means. What is a fun and meaningful experience that engages students? We think it's one that challenges but also encourages. The most rewarding things don't come to us easily the first time. It's the things that challenge us to try and try again. And that's why Brody hates games that only give him one shot to get it right. He misses out on the opportunity to feel the feeling of conquering the thing that stumped him the first time. And that's the feeling that's going to build his confidence and encourage him to keep learning and exploring more. And now I'm going to let Aaron talk to you guys about our final iteration of our converged prototype.
So coming out of Homewood, we had a lot of data, we had a lot of information. So we took all of that, we synthesized it, and we created our converged prototype, which is Explore Interactive's new onboarding experience. I'm going to walk you through the prototype through the eyes of our student persona, Brody. So I open up the Explore Interactive app, like Miss Bonnie tells me to, and since I'm a first-time player, I hit button 1. When the doors open, I see a lot of instructions, so I make sure to read it all, because I don't want to miss anything. I click on the arrows. At the last page, it tells me I can go to the second button. So I do that. When I get into the second page, it tells me that I need my Atom card. So I find my Atom card and I line it up with the square. Just gotta get it right. Excellent job. Moving to the third floor. On the third floor, I get to enter my grade and my teacher. I use my dad's iPad a lot, so I know how these menus work. I find the third grade, and then I look for my teacher. There she is, Miss Bonnie, down at the bottom. I click submit, and now I get to enter my name. B-R-O-D-Y. Got it. Moving to the fourth floor. When the fourth floor opened, it asked me if I wanted to select my robot character. Duh, of course I do. So I select yes, and I hit submit. I check out all of the options, because I need to find the perfect robot for me. But then, Miss Brody tells us we can't spend too much time, so I go with option B, because my name's Brody. I hit submit. And I go to the fifth floor. Looks like I'm ready to play. Oh wow, Dr. Pixel's calling. I find my control panel card and I put it in front of the screen. I click on the phone icon. Dr. Pixel pops up. What? Dr. Pixel knows my name. I read through the instruction and then I hit next. It looks like Dr. Pixel needs a little bit of help, so I'm gonna help her out. I'm gonna give her a toolbox. I start dragging it. Oh, rats. I wonder what this new icon is. Oh, okay, I have to drag it all the way to her. So I drag the icon. Perfect, got it on my first try. As you can see, we decided to move forward with a feature that's more Brody focused. We felt that getting Brody engaged and interacting with the game right from the get-go, as well as demonstrating how the cards work, as well as the drag feature, would benefit him the most and would set him up for the most success. The features that we had that were geared more towards Bonnie, such as the teacher dashboard, we decided to push those towards the future considerations, which Jasmine will go into more detail with.
Alright, so at this point we've talked to you about our research process and our design process, and we arrived at a solution for Bonnie and Brody in the form of our onboarding experience. So, what's next? Well, we took our onboarding prototype and we put it in front of a new group of users for usability testing. So the goal here was to see if our prototype worked. We wanted to see if the information flow and the navigation were intuitive and if the idea behind the prototype still made sense. So after conducting testing with 6 users, we got some really helpful feedback that drove our future considerations. So the first of our considerations has to do with the instructional flow. So the instructional flow from beginning to end was quick and easy for all of our users to understand. And this is really great because it means that Brody, once he gets to class, can pick up the app, walk through the instructions on his own, and immediately jump into the game. Because this is so intuitive, we think this is a great place to easily integrate another step, such as a multiplayer option. With character selection, all of our users showed the most excitement around this, which was slightly surprising just because after our second round of concept testing, we actually simplified the character selection process and removed customization options. But something to consider going forward is maybe to expand those features again and bring back the customization options. With the elevator concept, our users were able to move from floors 1 through 5 pretty easily, but it didn't always register that they were in an elevator. So we think to improve this, we could add some labels to the buttons or add extra buttons to help integrate the story. So an example of this, before you even get into the elevator, maybe there's a sign that says, "Welcome to Dr. Pixel's Underground Lab." Or on floor 3, when Brody's asked to enter in his name, we call that the reception desk. So speech references. This has to do with Dr. Pixel's conversation. And our users understood what she was trying to tell them. They also understood the general story arc, that she was part of what we would call the rebellion or the resistance. But because there were so many text bubbles in a row, our users quickly forgot each message. So one component we would expect is there to be audio to kind of read the text displayed. But another consideration we might have is to add what we call prior transmissions. So prior transmissions to be added to the control panel is somewhere the user could see all of Dr. Pixel's past messages and access the backstory to Explore Interactive. We would also expect to incorporate haptic vibrations into the error message part of it. So when Dr. Pixel asks Brody to drag the toolbox to her and he does it incorrectly, there's the exclamation mark and the dark red border. And we think that's a good visual indicator, but we think adding vibrations would help increase the accessibility. And finally, the teacher dashboard. So this is something that Lizzie touched on earlier in concepting that got positive feedback. And while we shifted our focus to Brody, this is something we would consider bringing back so that Bonnie could track the students' progress. So ideally, we would take these future considerations, and if we had more time, we would iterate on them, and we would conduct another round of usability testing. But this is the end of the process for our team, unfortunately. We really see our solution as the vehicle for content that is constantly changing. But we're really excited to see Explore Interactive grow. We think there's a lot of opportunity to make Bonnie and Brody's experience even better. And we're really grateful to Amanda and the team for giving us the chance to work on this, because it was a lot of fun working with kids. Like, they are really smart and they have a lot of cool ideas. And working with AR was super interesting too, because it's such a new technology and there are so many possibilities. So we just want to say thank you, and now we will open it up to questions and feedback.
I just want to start off by saying that I really like the format of your presentation. I think you could hear people laughing when you were demoing your designs. It felt very storytelling, which I think is when UX and design in general presentations really succeed, is when they're more than, even though we do often demand like the quantitative stuff, it felt engaging the whole time. So I do want to say really good job on that.
I think from a research point of view, really, because we are talking about children and just, design ethics and like speculative design, and really, because you are essentially forming the mind of the child, is to really do that psychological behavioral analysis primarily. So it sounded like you had two personas that were very, you're a healthy child, but what about children that are kind of struggling through occupational therapy, or that are autistic? They're looking at screens that, there's research showing that, babies like taking a look at a screen will somewhat kind of draw autistic behavior in the upcoming. So it's really kind of understanding that research in the forefront and really then designing for that value, I think, in addition to the current research. So yeah, again, more personas. I think a more variety would be very helpful.
Good idea, thank you.
I wasn't immediately certain, and I don't know, I do think towards the beginning you were going really fast in the presentation, so I wasn't immediately sure what the client wanted out of the project. So I know you came up with your problem statements, but I wasn't sure if there was a client goal or a client objective. And so how your research aligned with what your client was trying to get out of your project, it wasn't immediately clear.
Yeah, I think part of the goals was in the problem statement. Yeah, it wasn't immediately clear to me too until you brought up the problem statement again, and then so yeah, I think for future consideration, just really highlighting just those bold points that you want to hit those targets, those goals.
Yeah, specifically for research, like really show your process. I know there would be times where I'd be like, okay, what did he say again? Because you had a bullet point, but then you added additional, and it would have been nice to see, I think, just from a visual presentation, just to really understand.
Yeah, later on in the presentation, I liked seeing all the photos of you working together and whiteboarding, and especially for someone who may not be super familiar with the UX design process, being able to see those actual works that you're making was really, really useful. And then towards the end, Bonnie did a nice job of recapping kind of all of the work that had been done, and then kind of combining that into next steps.
I do like the future considerations because one of the questions I did have was, wait, the main home screen is the elevator? Is there a splash screen? And then you brought that up. I was like, oh, okay. And then you mentioned the speech references. I thought that was really good too. Maybe like a side log or something like that where they can follow along. One of the things I was going to mention from a UI perspective, which I know you guys don't really touch on, is just how can you go from that splash screen to the elevator, but is there like kind of a menu? Like it's very linear right now, and it's not always going to be very linear. So, and I know you're trying to take them on a path. So, what about the teacher's, dashboard? How does that look like? And I know that was one of the future considerations. So, just considering that it might not be a linear path, it might be spoken wheel. So,
I think to expand on that too is to have considerations that are prepared for visual designers as well, because they will take your principles and they will apply it because it's research. So maybe having why consider these specific things is also very valuable, I'd say.
Yeah, especially on that note, at first glance, the elevator didn't quite make sense to me, and then someone said it's an underground lab, and that made more sense because starting at one from the top and then going down was disorienting and distracting for me. Just thinking like, why is it going down and we're going up? Having that splash screen or some kind of like.
Yeah, and we've thought and we've discussed a lot about that because there started to become this question of when you see that panel on the side with the numbers, does that mean you're getting better skills and going to another skill level, or how is that all working? So that definitely is something we're trying to address. I think the one thing that we did notice in some user testing, we had someone as young as 5 years old that picked up, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that in most cases in the testing, it seemed to make sense as we saw people respond to it.
That's good to know. Yeah. And that is probably partly a visual design part, like creating it and making it look like an elevator and really understanding that. But I think adding those labels to know what you're expecting when the doors open might be useful.
I think that would be super helpful. Also, just coming up with questions that are more behavioral, like why is it on the left side? Is that the right side to put it on? Like really exploring just how a child's mind works is very also interesting. I keep forgetting this one question. Just exit every time I make something.
I do like that you specified your persona, that it's Brody. I'm very curious in your user testing whether there were and you just mentioned it right now, there was one of your users did test pretty quickly. He understood the path. So I'm very curious just more usability finding how some of these users, they're different learning development, whether they're faster than their third grade counterparts, whether they're a little bit more they need a little bit more hand-holding. So just how would that play into your onboarding?
And I think to your point, when you're talking about your persona being Brody, would have definitely liked to see why you chose to focus on Brody more, but also even if you're gonna focus solely on Brody for your design, it felt like, especially an onboarding experience, it felt very disconnected from your second persona, who would, what's the likelihood that the child is just given a tablet and is onboarded alone? It's like, would the teacher ever be a part of this onboarding experience? So even if you're not focusing on the teacher as the solution, you design solution, they're probably not as disconnected from the child's workflow as it may have been shown here. So thinking about the teacher's needs as well actually I think may have helped a little bit. I would have liked to see more than just an onboarding experience, to be honest. I think that it was helpful to get a sense of the product, but at the same time it felt very limited. So there's so many questions I have in terms of like, so you've onboarded and now you're in level 5, but what happens the next time a student comes in? It's like, do they know that after they've onboarded, do they go straight to level 5 and skip the first 4 and so on?
Yeah, I think the tangible piece that you've created is really compelling, but I feel like the main thing is really understanding the personas. I feel like that is like the most important thing, because understanding those personas, especially for children, is what will drive the experience, whether you have something tangible or not. So if it's various levels, like understanding maybe a child that does not learn as quickly as other children, maybe that's a level. Maybe really pacing them on certain things, and then really taking in consideration error handling, because there will be children that cognitively vibrations may not be something that's good. So it's really researching the development of a child and that psychology and behavior behind it, and really studying that and then setting up the stage for an experience, whether that be augmented reality, but at least you have that foundation to really transcend that experience and really help that child through that digital vehicle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think your personas could have probably been scoped down a little bit more, to better help you guys understand some of the onboarding experience. Maybe because it's so broad now, yeah, we have all these questions on, did you think about this type of child and this type of child? And it would have been fine if you had multiple personas of different developmental stages of a children's education, as well as the teacher.
Yeah, I would have loved to see all that research. It would have been so intriguing, and I feel like the client would then have even more to work off of. Maybe the elevator is just a portion, but because we know X, Y, and Z, the business can expand in various verticals just because of that research.
Yeah, it's great that you were able to actually talk to children about this, and yeah, it would have been really neat to see like quotes from the kids, or like even videos of them using.
I think we were just
different
shocked
things.
that the first 2 kids that we talked to were like, oh, we love science.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess to that point, like, we did see a little bit of a spectrum. So one of the first kids we interviewed, like, ran in, and we were like, oh, what grade are you in? He's like, oh, I was in 4th grade. I should be going to 5th grade, but I'm skipping that and going to 6th grade. And so I was like, oh, this kid is a genius and smarter than us. So we kind of saw like that, and then like kids that need more guidance. And we did find that like the onboarding that we had, which definitely could use improvements, like the onboarding that we had kind of fit the users that we were testing. But I do think it's a good point to kind of think outside.
Did you create the personas before or after you talked to the kids?
It was after our first round of user interviews. So we talked to, I think it was
4 of them.
4 kids.
Yeah.
And then we created our personas. And we also did some teachers that were gen ed as well as special ed to get a broad range of students, or teachers.
What SMEs did you talk to?
It was our client. Amanda Ariella, she works for High Point, and she does early education. She's a psychologist.
I think that's great because she's a psychologist, but also thinking of, we are designing, or you're designing this product, right? But how is it any different than an education system that is very formatted to the masses and not individually? So how is this different from the education we currently have? And I think I'm getting into more design ethics. But how can we equal that out, or how, in terms of privilege, right? You were talking about those who can learn at that pace, and we're getting to those. Should we consider the other persona types, everybody, all children, if that makes sense?
Are these devices, like, I mean, I assume that they're classroom learning tools, so it's going to be provided in classroom.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this wasn't intended to be an at-home exercise.
It's the supplemental material for STEM lessons that the teacher would implement into her lessons.
Into your lessons, so the tools are provided, like the iPads or
Yeah.
phones or whatever, will be provided by the classroom.
Yeah, the card, they also come with a set of cards as well that would all be in the classroom.
One of the things that, like, you guys have in your comparative analysis, you know, looking through some of the other products that already are out there and that exist, like you have the home products. Can't think of some of those names right now. I think the ones that are more game oriented, I think it would be really good to kind of leverage what their onboarding experience would be and kind of really dig into, research their onboarding and kind of bring out some of those features, test against that.
Yeah, I was looking at, whenever I was doing the research, Minecraft in particular, I was looking at the floating contextual menus that they had and kind of thinking about that. And it seemed kind of nice with the elevator concept to have it kind of grounded off to the side and have it move out of the way at some point in time, which seems to be what is going on with the examples of the Minecraft I was researching.
So one of the questions in your competitive analysis, you were talking about the opportunities for this project coming from things you saw that perhaps your competitors were lacking. I don't want to keep harping on the persona, but I think it would have been much more helpful to build that up if you had also built your problem statement and seen the opportunities from just regular user observation. So if you went to a classroom with a bunch of students of different learning levels, you might have seen other opportunities that maybe weren't immediately clear just from comparing competitors or from just SMEs. Like, I think anything relating to education and children really benefits from just lots of initial observation and how kids behave and how it behaves also in like the learning environment, like a classroom full of 20 kids of the age of 5 to 9. How does that differ from like now they're having the iPads and like that whole workflow? May have helped hone in that problem statement beyond just like the differences of my competitors.
Actually, now that she brought up a really good scenario, something to test. This is the audience. Brody was in 3rd grade, right? Just thinking through that classroom environment, if they're going to be in the classroom, not all 3rd graders are going to be sitting still, and especially not all 3rd graders are going to be collaborative.
Yeah.
And so they might fight for the cards, or it just. I'm very curious to see more user testing in that classroom environment because, you're not going to get the perfect scenario where one kid's going to sit down and scan his card because someone else might take their card or take their iPad or different scenarios.
Yeah, you always want to strain test your designs. Like we tend to look at them in the happy path. Like, this is a really happy environment. The kid is isolated in a room where like they're not interacting with their other classmates, but like really pushing your designs to the boundaries where you're like, this is where it would actually be used. Let's test it to see how it actually behaves. And there's a lot of insights that you can get from like just putting it out there. That's why a lot of like beta testing also often happens for that.
Yeah, I think even if you can't have a whole bunch of research, because I feel like it would be a whole bunch of research, is maybe even stepping back and maybe designing something so that we can understand their user types. So maybe having like a quiz or whatever kind of game it is to understand maybe this child is dyslexic or this child is, has cognitive, like, things that are happening. So maybe even taking a step back and really defining those user types, and then once we understand that, then you can develop a better experience from there on.
Clients on the call, Wesley or Ariella, any questions or comments from you? I realize the speaker's over there now.
Wesley, do you want to speak first, and then I'll talk?
Sure. I just have a few quick questions. First off, thank you for looking into what we're doing and really testing it out and checking all the hypotheses when designing something. I'm interested to know, you said you talked to a few kids. We've also done some independent testing on our own, but what did you feel regarding the words on the screen? Do you think that could be, it sounded like your potential child was a great reader, but I can tell you that that's not really the case, especially for fourth graders. And when there's a lot of words, sometimes they shut down. What would you suggest, or how do you suggest making sure it's inclusive for all children as they open the application and start the process of the app?
Something like that actually came up during our
Wait. Bring your face closer.
Something like that actually did come up during one of our user tests. A child, I believe he was in the 3rd grade, he had a really hard time reading the screen. And so I pretty much had to read the text for him, which is why we figured that we should have some sort of audio component that would also be with it, something to help the student read if he can, and explain the text that's on the screen.
Okay. Did you notice any difficulty with handling of the iPad or the iPhone and manipulating, the dexterity piece of it? Did you see that as a potential barrier to, adoption or getting into the whole process?
The majority of the prototypes that we tested were stationary, so we weren't able to fully get the mobile aspect of the kid moving the iPad around. So we weren't really able to get too much research into that.
Okay. And did you test any differences between, or did you think about any differences between males and females or girls and boys? Because we've seen a pretty substantial difference in the two groups so far. I didn't know if you looked into that at all.
We had a pretty good split with them, particularly at the science fair. I think we got a little half and half there. So I can't speak to it because I didn't get to see all of the testing between the two of them. But
Yeah.
I didn't notice much.
I guess, well, I listened to all the interviews, and I don't think I really saw any differences between boys and girls, so we kind of just considered our users as children altogether.
I think the only difference I really noticed was more, I felt like some of the girls that we tested or interviewed, there was a different level of insecurity that I think played a part in how they went through the test, where I felt like the boys we tested was not on their mind if they were gonna look silly or something. So that was really, it was more an attitude difference than an interest difference.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Those are all the questions I have for now.
I had a couple of comments. So this is Ariella. Thank you very much. I found it really super interesting. So you did show the existing app to students, correct?
No, that's not what we tested. We just tested what we showed during our presentation.
Okay. That's what I was trying to understand. It would have been helpful, I think, to, I'm curious about the onboarding that we have there. I think one of the philosophies I have as a game designer is to get the player into the action as quickly as possible. What we've seen is that if you require them to go through some kind of tutorial or sort of heavy-duty onboarding initially, then you lose them, you know, right off the bat, because there are many other games they could be playing or things they could be doing. So the key, in my opinion, is to figure out how to onboard the player within the context of the activity, you know, so that they're actually engaged and involved, and as they're doing that, you're showing them what they need to know. So it's not that one couldn't do that step by step initially, and for kids, and it's an educational app, maybe that's the best approach in this instance, but so I was curious, you know, about what your experience had been with the actual app. I wanted to say I really like the idea of the haptic feedback when the kids make a mistake. We've used that in some other games, and it's amazingly effective. So, and I had never thought of that before. And, you know, as you had mentioned, error response, I think our app needs a lot of work in that area. So I hope we get to go to the next stage, and, you know, would love your feedback on that. I had a question about the control panel for kids, and I was wondering, what were the options? What were the things that kids were controlling in the control panel? I must have missed that. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Currently, the piece that we built out is really the vehicle for storytelling. So a way for you to incorporate your backstory and how you want to progress the game is a way. So we have them like Dr. Pixel calling in, and that's the only feature we've built out, is having the ability for you to insert like extra story as you progress through the game. The other features that were there, one that we had considered was like a map to show different levels as you progress through, so you could see when that card is put in front of the camera, then on the screen you could see which level you're at. And then the last one, the last component of that control panel was a like mission status, so you could see how far along you are in level 1. And then we also had a space for maybe showing that avatar that they had selected.
Yeah, I like I mean, I think there's a ton of room for gamification, you know, as we build out this app, so that not only things like leaderboards and achievements, but being able to see your progress, you know, and this is how far you are in this process of, you know, mastering this content. So I like all of that. We don't usually call that a control page, you know, and I'm still not quite sure what the kid is controlling, so much as I feel like they do need a place where they can go to, you know, really see their accomplishments and progress. Just like the teacher needs a teacher dashboard is a great idea too.
I think the idea kind of was born out of the concept of having like a James Bond sort of watch that you could put up front and do stuff with, but then we started thinking about just the physical mechanics of that and having the kid be still enough to have that go on. So I think it progressed into having some sort of, you know, kind of a remote control sort of idea to slide out in front.
Okay. You know, what's really cool about choosing your own character, now we don't have currently a visualization of the child character. We just have the characters who are telling you the story, but that's an interesting idea that the kid could have their own persona and their own avatar that they control. They could, I'm not sure how I guess they could, for example, it might be fun to unlock articles of clothing or ways that you can change the appearance of the characters telling you the story as you progress through you know, as you complete missions and that kind of thing. So there might be a way there, but it seemed like you were talking about the child having a persona, right? Having a character, an avatar within the application.
Yeah. During our domain research, we found that with AR games, one of the best ways to get kids engaged with the game is to have them entered into the game as a character, because it makes them feel more emotionally involved in what's going on in the game, as opposed to just outside figure like manipulating cards on the table. They actually feel for Adam and Dr. Pixel.
No, that's interesting. I mean, we haven't, it's clearly important, any kind of personalization and customization that one can do, you know, how the child can change the experience. You know, so we haven't thought about them being a character in the actual story, so that would be a different tact, and that's very interesting.
Ariella, I'm gonna have to cut you off because we still have one more team that needs to present. But thank you so much for your feedback. Any final thoughts from the team?
Thanks again for
Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
All right, thank you.